Hello to everyone watching, and welcome to our breakdown of and welcome to our breakdown of UFC 312, Plessis versus Strickland 2. This event live from Sydney in Australia this weekend. Pretty good card. I mean, top to bottom, not the best in terms of name value or talent, but we're in for some fun fights for sure. Joining me, as always, Nick, to break down these fights. How are you feeling heading into this card and off of the card last week?
Yeah, I mean, this one's pretty top heavy if we're being honest. We get the two title fights and then not much, like you said, in terms of name value. The Aussies, they're represented on this card, but definitely not by their best talent. Um, but yeah, a lot of violent fights on paper at least. So should be pretty fun to break down and bet, even if we're not getting as much value as we may want out of a pay-per-view card.
Yep, feeling the same way. Couple spots I'm eager to get some action on. But yeah, top to bottom, not the best as far as pay-per-views go. We'll start now with the middleweight main event for the title. Dricus du Plessis looking to defend the belt, the minus 200 favorite against Sean Strickland. This fight is a rematch of about 1 year ago that Duplessis was able to win by split decision. A close decision. I think the right fighter got his hand raised. Certainly contentious moments. Strickland doing great work early, great work late. The Duplessis winning a lot of those minutes in the middle, effectively landing the bigger strikes on Sean Strickland, getting timely takedowns, some good top control time, winning a couple rounds just based on his ability to grapple Strickland. I think here in this fight, we're going to see a lot of the same from Duplessis and perhaps even a bit more reckless style. He's super confident in his cardio. We see that every single fight. And for that reason, he's kind of a very tough stylistic matchup for a guy like Strickland, somebody who can normally overwhelm you with his pressure, with his boxing, his ability to continue throwing 10 punch combinations in the fourth and fifth round is what separates Strickland from a lot of guys, but Duplessis is still going to be there. I really don't think Strickland can do much to hurt him, and I don't think Duplessis is afraid of that. He's going to be comfortable walking into Strickland's range and landing those big power shots. Although Duplessis is a bit goofy in his entries and the sort, it's just hard to deny him at this point. He's able to overwhelm guys. He fights through it when other guys don't. And yeah, his cardio has really become a weapon. He manages his pace well. And yeah, I think he's going to attack Strickland with even more confidence here today, perhaps leading to a finish. I think if a finish does come, it's going to be on the feet for Duplessis, perhaps overwhelming Strickland with strikes, but it'll probably be another decision here. I think the South African will pull out a bit more convincingly this time. But yeah, whenever these two are locked in the cage, you're going to be in for a pretty close fight.
Yeah, I mean, I did think Sean edged it the first time around. You can't really cry robbery, though. It was a super close fight. A lot of rounds could have gone either way. The big key to that fight, at least in Sean's eyes, was that he got headbutted, had the cut that was affecting his vision. Really stopped him from being aggressive until that fifth round, where he did seem to turn things on late. But yeah, Duplessis just a very tough puzzle to solve. I don't know. A lot of people were low on him coming into the promotion because he's very wonky in his striking. I mean, he's pulled guys onto him in grappling exchanges before. Nothing he does is really by the book, but he gets by on just sheer will and pure power and athleticism. He's definitely one of the stronger guys in the division. And I mean, certainly stronger than Strickland in both exchanges and in grappling scrambles. It's going to be interesting. I do think Duplessis more likely has made the bigger improvements since the last fight, just because Sean really just fights one style. Everyone knows he gets these hours into sparring, but yeah, he just gets so comfortable in there that he's just keeping jabbing, occasionally follows it up with a few hooks. Very rarely do we see him grapple. Somewhat predictable in a lot of the things he does. I mean, he does them very well. But Duplessis, I think, more likely to maybe grapple a little bit more aggressively this time around. He did have success later in that fight against Strickland. Strickland does do a good job working his way back to his feet, but Duplessis has shown he can take him down more often than not, and I do think in these close rounds is probably going to be the difference on the scorecard. I'm a big fan of Strickland. Like I said, I did think he probably edged out that first fight. You could go either way. At the price, he's very tempting to back as an underdog here. I will say though, I'm pretty concerned about this massive staph infection on his arm. It looks to be healed, but it means he was probably on antibiotics the last few weeks, and historically, that's really damaged cardio. Sean is a fighter who tries to weaponize his cardio, similar to how you're describing Duplessis. If he's unable to do that, it kind of takes away what he's best at. He usually wins death by 1,000 cuts, pressuring opponents, putting volume on them, and then kind of opening up in the later rounds. That's going to be tough to do if his cardio is not at 100%, especially against a guy who's going to be blitzing him like Duplessis. Um, I don't know. I wanted to back Strickland here when this rematch was announced. I just think, as far as momentum goes, Duplessis coming off that Izzy win, it definitely has an advantage in that category as well. Strickland did do well against Costa, but Costa not really the top tier of this division anymore, in my opinion. So I do think Duplessis gets it done here. I really don't like the price. I do think the fight likely goes to distance regardless. I would probably take the over here before either side, but it does seem like this is a good spot for Duplessis, although the crowd certainly loves Sean Strickland down there in Australia.
Okay, well, another very close fight to look at next in the co-main event. Undefeated facing undisputed here with Zhang Weili looking to win her 6th title fight with another defense. Here at strawweight, coming off a good scrap with Yang Jianan in her last fight. You know, perhaps the champion put to a bit more of a test there than some were expecting. Yang Jianan, someone that likely will be back in the title picture. And the same could be said for Tatiana Suarez, who has sort of been building towards this title shot for quite some time. She's an elite wrestler, excellent skill set on the mat. She's great at finding chokes and transitioning from one position to another without even risking losing control of her opponents. Weili is someone who, we've seldom seen taken down. Good skills of her own grappling, able to get up, able to fight back to her feet when we have seen her grounded before. And certainly when it comes to her offensive wrestling and grappling, huge advantage over most of the girls that she's fighting. But obviously that's not going to be the case here. I think this fight's pretty appropriately lined near pick'em. But anytime you're going to give me a plus number on the champion, Zhang Weili, I'm going to have to take it. This is the only time since her fight with Jessica Andrade that she has been the betting underdog. I think her striking is going to be the difference here. We've seen Weili more active than Tatiana Suarez and certainly able to fight much more efficiently on the feet. I think she's going to be deadly in the clinch as Suarez looks to engage with these grappling exchanges. A lot of her attacks are traditional single and double legs, but if she is looking to pressure Weili against the fence, she's going to be hitting knees, elbows, just a much cleaner strikes. Over the course of 5 rounds, Weili should be putting on damage on Suarez, whereas I don't see Tatiana really having effective striking to put a hurt on Weili or drop her in any big point here. So got to go with the champion. I think she is going to be able to defend. Suarez is somebody I've been super high on, and her wrestling is that X factor. It's just hard to imagine Weili getting grounded for this whole fight. I think success does need to come early for her, as rounds 4 and 5 could go to Suarez as that grappling finally breaks through. But again, what Weili is able to do on the feet, I think she's going to be able to beat up Suarez and hand her first loss as a professional.
Yeah, man, this fight's extremely tough to predict because depending on which version of Tatiana Suarez here, I think really kind of determines how this fight plays out. Suarez at her best is by far the best grappler Weili will have ever faced. We know she's taken on Carla Esparza. Suarez famously was very close to being in the Olympics before suffering an injury. This is a woman who's overcome cancer, multiple knee surgeries. I mean, she's really been through it all. So while these women are similar in age, Weili's definitely kind of been through the fire more experienced, certainly. But definitely more war-torn than anything. But Suarez at her best, I do think this is a really tough stylistic matchup. Weili's grappling has come a long way, but earlier in her career, and even in those first few fights against Rose, it was kind of a hole that opponents were trying to exploit. She has just a 50% takedown defense in the UFC. I know training with the Hickman brothers has certainly helped her kind of shore up that part of her game, but I do think Suarez is going to be able to take her down somewhat easily. And the other big factor here, these women are listed only 1 inch in difference in terms of height. Suarez is absolutely massive for a strawweight. I really don't understand how she makes the weight. A lot of times we do see that with wrestlers because growing up, they're very used to making weight. They tend to do it better than some of these MMA fighters. Weili just not huge as far as strawweights go. But yeah, I mean, she's certainly the better striker here. In many ways, this is a super binary matchup. On the feet, I think Weili dominates, even if she is at a reach disadvantage of 3 to 4 inches. But as far as grappling goes, Suarez should pretty much get what she wants here. And if she's able to control minutes in all these rounds, I could certainly see her winning. Honestly, this is a fight I want to spend a little bit more time on. I want to see these two face off again. I want to see how Suarez looks at weigh-in. There's a lot of intangibles in a fight that's a coin flip like this at such a high level that are worth weighing as you kind of make your final decision. All the more reason to check out our article on Saturday morning. I love Weili. I've backed her pretty much in all of her fights over the past few years, but I've been on Suarez for a long time. I do think stylistically this is just super difficult matchup for pretty much anyone. But again, is she going to be the best version of herself here? That's yet to be determined. If she's not, Weili having the more well-rounded game, being able to work back to her feet, and kind of carrying that cardio should be enough for her to retain her title. But at the same time, she has seen somewhat vulnerable, especially in that fight against Yan Xiaonan her last time out, a woman who took her down, really not known for her grappling. Stylistically, I do slightly prefer Suarez. I am looking at the prices right now. There's a book that still has her at plus money. I mean, this is a line that's kind of flipped back and forth. But yeah, I do like Suarez. Probably would have better as a favorite though. But again, I do want to spend some more time on this fight. Want to check out weigh-ins, etc. A lot of intangibles, especially on the Suarez side.
All right. Next up, we will look at this matchup at heavyweight between Tallison Teixeira and Justin Tafa. Teixeira minus 140, the slight betting favorite in this spot against Tafa, who could be had at plus 120 odds. Tafa, obviously, big favorite of the home crowd here in this spot. Certainly, a lot of people tuning in looking for the knockout from Tafa. Although only 4-4 in his UFC tenure, lost his last fight, taken down on 7 of 12 attempts against Carl Williams. That's not going to be the case here. Facing another striker in Teixeira, it's a stylistic matchup where Tafa really should be able to hold his own, and that's why we're seeing a very short number here in terms of the betting odds. Um, I think in this fight, well, Tafa is live, capable of landing that big blow, hurting the much taller Teixeira. It's going to be difficult for him to effectively close distance. He's super durable. He's a hard guy to stop, but I think Tafa is going to eat a lot of clean shots here as he looks to engage and find that big overhand against Teixeira. Teixeira 6'7", he's listed, 83-inch reach. That's 9 inches of reach on Tafa and 7-inch height advantage. We've seen before Teixeira is very effective with his kicks. I think he could bring one up high here and probably hurt Tafa kick in that manner. Just 25 years old, seems to be improving. I think in a pretty binary matchup against a guy like Tafa where you know what you're getting, he should have the edge if he's able to stay out of harm's way. Certainly the technical advantage to beat a guy like Justin Tafa. So I'm going to side with Teixeira here. Not super confident. Heavyweights, anything can obviously happen. And yeah, Tafa has nukes in his hand, so would not surprise me to see Teixeira get knocked out. But I'm going to side with them. Decent price, minus 140. Better than a lot of the other favorites on the card.
Yeah, man, I'm having trouble backing Teixeira here. And I mean, he has the physical intangibles, or not intangibles, they're very tangible, actually. A very tall guy, massive reach, even for a heavyweight. Going to have a crazy reach advantage here. But defensively, he's not sound. And I mean, he hasn't taken on anyone that is quite Tafa's level yet. I mean, some of the LFA competition's good. Nice KO win on the Contender Series. But this is a guy eating a lot of strikes in all of these fights before he's finding these finishes. Tafa usually very patient. Definitely the much better defensive striker here. So I do expect Teixeira to come out hot. And if he can maybe find an early finish, I'm not going to be surprised. He's done it before, but Tafa is such a good kind of counter striker. I do think Teixeira could be in trouble. Additionally, Tafa is a southpaw. I don't think Teixeira's faced anyone even close to his level in terms of quality southpaw. It's definitely a new look for him. And Tafa, he could get the kick up there as well. He's taken on tall opponents in the past, such as Austin Lane, etc. I don't know. The one thing I will say on the Teixeira side is allegedly he's a black belt. I think he has BJJ tattooed on his body, which usually means he spent some time grappling, but we just haven't seen that in any of his fights. The clear path to victory for him would be to try to take this fight down. I do think he could probably find a submission on Tafa if his credentials are as real as they're touted. I just don't know that we see that because we really haven't before. I'm I'm expecting Teixeira to come out hot. Again, there could be some nerves here. Big card placement, first fight in the UFC in front of a crowd that's going to hate him. They love Justin Tafa. Justin definitely the superior of the two Tafa brothers. I haven't been super impressed, but really he does tend to just struggle against guys who are going to grapple, and I don't know that we see that here. So, assuming this fight takes place on the feet, Teixeira, I mean, he's 7-0. What makes him great is that he's going to have this crazy confidence, but at the same time, I do think that could cost him here against a pretty gifted vet in Justin Tafa, at least in terms of kickboxing. So yeah, I do like Tafa here. I do think he's the value side. I think the market's just a little bit inflated on the Teixeira side because of the undefeated record, because he's finishing guys. But Tafa definitely poses a different level of threat. But yeah, it's heavyweights. They're big. They hit hard. They fall hard. Definite volatility here. Wouldn't get too invested either way.
Yeah, no doubt. Should be a fun one though. We'll look now at this fight between Rodolfo Bellato facing Jimmy Crute, light heavyweight. Bellato minus 160, the betting favorite here against Crute, who could be had at plus 135. I think this matchup stylistically is much more interesting. Crute is somebody who very much relies on taking his fights to the mat when he is looking to have any kind of success. His grappling is good in terms of taking down guys, but in terms of a dominating grappler, I wouldn't really describe Crute as that. He struggles to control his opponents when they are taken down. He's also winless in his last 4 fights. His only recent victory is coming back in 2020 against the likes of Modestas Bukauskas and Michelle Olajaychak. So when I look at his resume, I think, okay, where's Bellato stand in terms of the guys that Crute has more recently faced? I think he certainly can fare well here against a grappler like Crute. He's comfortable grappling too. We've seen Bellato before take fights to the mat on his own volition and do well in that manner. But he does have tight boxing, the heavier hands. He's good at defending takedowns when he's been put to that test as well. I think Crute will look to shoot maybe a half dozen times here, and if he gets half of them, it'll certainly be interesting. But Bellato should be able to stuff at least 1 or 2 quite easily. Especially as the bigger guy, a bit more active, and again, effective when it comes to landing those strikes as his opponents move forward. Crute's somebody who's been caught quite a few times. You'd hope he'd learn to keep his hands up. Again, he's fighting in a weight class where guys have some serious power, and we really haven't seen Crute able to match that or gain much respect of his own on the feet. I find it tough betting him, even as he's fighting here in Australia. Getting plus money. I think Bellato instead is going to be your safer bet. Small favorite. And again, if he's able to keep this fight standing, he has a decisive advantage over Jimmy Crute in my eyes. We've seen guys, touch Crute, hurt him bad. But Bellato just more complete in terms of his boxing and even mixing in kicks here and there. We've also seen Crute susceptible to those as well.
Yeah, this was tough for me. I think Crute, when he was kind of new in the UFC, was a really interesting prospect. He wins over Paul Craig, Olajaychuk, a few other pretty talented guys that have been ranked or close to ranked. And Bellato, super dangerous, especially at striking range, but a lot of holes in his game on the defensive side of things. So Crute, interestingly, after that Minefield loss, put his gloves down in the cage. Seems like he wanted to retire. Head wasn't in the game at all. Listening to a bunch of interviews this week, he's gone through some dark places trying to work his way back, but does finally seem to have a good head on his shoulders, which is a big, big thing for him. Definitely a fighter who does get in his own way at times. I think in terms of technical striking ability, like Crute can hang on the feet here. It's just going to be a question of, is he going to be willing to stay in there if he does take a couple shots from Bellato, who is super powerful and is probably going to rush forward? I think he can outclass him if he can extend this fight. Crute, but I don't know that he has the will to necessarily extend it. So again, a fight I do want to spend a little bit more time on. I've liked what I've heard from Crute in interviews. I do think on the feet he can stay defensively sound, mix in leg kicks to kind of keep Bellato off of him. But if he is taken down, really sneaky good submission grappler, I'm just not very confident in his headspace. But at the same time, I'm not really confident in Bellato's skill set. So it's like I don't really like either of these guys. Feels like Bellato's like the new up and comer. Crute's actually the younger fighter. This is kind of a second stint for him, even though he wasn't cut. He probably will be if he doesn't get the win here. So again, front of the home crowd, back against the wall, that creates a lot of pressure. Is that going to create a diamond or is he going to crumble? I don't know. But yeah, a volatile matchup. Right now, I do slightly prefer the Crute side just because of the plus money, but I can't say it with any sort of confidence. I'm just not very high on either of these guys. I mean, it's kind of the state of the light heavyweight division right now. Anything outside of the top 15 gets pretty ugly. But yeah, this fight could go either way. I do think Crute, if it gets extended, will look good and could pull away on the scorecards, but Bellato's shown he can end the fight really quickly. So, low confidence play right now. I'm slightly preferring the Crute side, but I don't know. Maybe face-offs, we see something. Bellato's got him shaking or something like that. I could definitely see myself flipping the pick.
All right. Well, next up, we will look at the main card opener. This one, again, pay-per-view starting at 10 p.m. Jake Matthews minus 240, the betting favorite here, facing Francisco Prado, who could be had at plus 190. Prado lost his last matchup, but really held up pretty well against Daniel Zellhuber. Landing some of the bigger shots, honestly, in that matchup, although he was out volumed. Dynamic in terms of his punching power and all that. But Prado's a guy with short arms. I don't know if you see it the same as me. Has to overcome a 4-inch reach advantage again here in this matchup. Not as significant as in the Zellhuber fight, but Matthews is somebody that fights long and effectively with his boxing. I think it's going to be difficult for the Argentinian to close distance effectively here facing Jake Matthews. It's going to be tough for him going in close against Matthews, a guy who's so dynamic when it comes to finding his counters, as well as when he really wants to establish himself on the front foot, pressure forward, and put his opponents, on the retreat. Worth noting as well, in that fight against Zellhuber, unanimous decision, but each round he was outlanded. And I think that could be the case again here in the striking match facing Jake Matthews. Prado still young and developing as a professional, whereas Matthews has sort of found a second wind as he enters his 30s and a latter stage of his career. Really, a guy who has grown up in fighting inside of the UFC and against upper echelon competition. Whereas this is more of a test for Prado against the more proven veteran. It's also a test up weight for Prado. His last fight against Zellhuber at 155 pounds. Matthews is all of a welterweight. I think he's going to be the bigger guy, heavier guy, have the edge in any sort of grappling exchanges we may see. Prado will probably want to keep this a striking match, although he may have a disadvantage in terms of his hand speed. I see him getting clipped. Matthews probably, one of the better Aussies to back here on this card. But certainly a closer fight, and Prado, with what we've seen, capable of holding his own, capable of fighting to decision. I just don't think he's going to beat Jake Matthews, although he's not the most consistent in terms of these guys outside the rankings at welterweight. What are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty much aligned with you. One key point that you didn't bring up is the fact that Prado's moving up a weight class here. So he's looked okay. Zellhuber, certainly one of the longer lightweights, but up at 170, he's going to be even more outsized. It's kind of a weird move. Don't fully understand it. But yeah, I mean, he did a good job surviving against Zellhuber, but he was brutalized. I mean, he came out hot, kind of got slowed down and then picked apart from there. Zellhuber really figured out his timing over the course of 3 rounds. But in this fight, I do think Matthews is going to be the better pocket boxer. He's going to need to stay safe, but he has the grappling to fall back on here. I think that's the very clear path to victory for him. Only 3 fights for Prado in the UFC, but just a 25% takedown defense. Really not great. Matthews, not the best wrestler in the world, but he's shown he's willing to mix in that part of his game. Saw it last time out against Phil Rowe. And with the size advantage I expect at 170 here, I think he's going to be able to find the takedowns he wants and needs. Probably can find a submission or a ground and pound. Prado's super durable on the feet, but I do think he can maybe find a finish on the mat. So Matthews, as I'm sitting here kind of touting him, saying how great he is super inconsistent. But against a guy coming up in weight who's nowhere near the rankings, I do think he should be fine to kind of clear this test. Pretty decent on the money line. I mean, never feel great about picking him inside, but if the number's nice and inflated, I may take a shot on that. But yeah, I just think Prado's going to be outsized. I think he's going to be outskilled, especially on the mat. Matthews, like you said, growing up in the UFC, he's been in the promotion since he was 19 years old. Absolutely ridiculous. Now 30 in front of his home crowd. He's been alternating wins and losses. If you want to follow that pattern, it'd be a loss here. But I do think Prado is the type of matchup he should find success in. I expect he's going to lean on his grappling. Maybe he has to weather a little bit of an early storm, but he should have this one covered no matter where it goes.
All right, with you on that one. We'll look now at the preliminary card. The featured prelim coming at featherweight. Gabriel Santos minus 240, the betting favorite, against Jack Jenkins, who could be had at plus 190. Nick, what are your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, this is tricky. These are two guys who've been impressive at times, also shown kind of holes in their games at times. I mean, Santos came on the scene, fought really close with Leroy Murphy to the point that some people actually thought he won that fight. Murphy now a top five, I think, featherweight. Just shows the type of level he's at. And then he was doing really well against Onama until he got caught. Probably a little bit overconfident in that spot, then suffering via KO. And then Jenkins, I mean, at his best, he's breaking guys' legs, but he has a pretty big hole in his game in terms of the grappling. And I think that's probably going to be the difference in this fight. Santos does average nearly 3.5 takedowns per 15 minutes. Jenkins, really good striker, going to be dangerous on the feet, but I do think Santos has a path if he chooses to take him down. Jenkins does have decent BJJ, but he's the type of fighter who does like to play off his back rather than work his way back to his feet. We saw that at times against Don Shainis, who probably should have never been in the UFC. No disrespect to Don, just gotten there kind of late in his career. But yeah, man, I like Jenkins. I think on the feet, he could probably win this fight. But I do think Santos just has the kind of explosive athletic ability to take this fight to the mat where and when he wants to, and he should dominate there. I know Jenkins has decent BJJ, but it's just not on his level, in my opinion. And I do think that he'll probably be able to kind of control position until he can work for some ground and pound. I like Santos here. Two really solid young fighters. Nothing's going to surprise me, but I just think the more well-rounded game for Santos is going to be the difference.
Yeah, this was like one of the toughest fights for me to predict here this week. I think Jenkins is a very popular underdog selection, and I get it. Not only fighting at home here in Australia, but his striking advantage should give him, some edge in this fight. One that is favored to go the distance, minus 170 to see the judges' scorecards. I think that plays a factor in trying to handicap this one, as Santos is the better grappler and likely able to control Jenkins for large portions of this fight. Jenkins is the much better striker, and I think he has the size to sort of hold his own and perhaps keep this on the feet longer than someone anticipate. If he's able to get his boxing going, and these are close rounds, I certainly think the home judging could be a factor in this one, with Jenkins perhaps cashing the underdog ticket. But I am with you. Ultimately, my selection for the winner of this fight would be Gabriel Santos. I think he's going to be able to score those takedowns and keep Jenkins on the mat for a large part in this one. We've seen it before. Jenkins, well, he's improving a bit, and obviously his jiu-jitsu is a factor, and perhaps at least attempting submissions to sweep out of these positions on the ground. I don't think he's going to find much sustained striking success against Gabriel Santos. A lot of this fight will be fought off his back, and that's no way to win. So I'm with you. Going to take Santos for that matchup. And now we will look at another tight fight. This one between lightweights. Viacheslav Borschchev minus 140. The betting favorite here against Tom Nolan. Slight underdog is Tom Nolan, who last fought in August here in Australia. Seems like a decent prospect. The UFC's trying to build up. An exciting guy, puts on exciting fights. Very big power you see out of Tom Nolan. Big for a lightweight as well. Able to generate very explosive attacks. But he's a bit more rudimentary in terms of his striking when compared to a highly skilled kickboxer like Borschchev. If Nolan does just want to go in and engage Borschchev here striking, I think he's going to get lit up. We saw Nolan knocked out by Nicholas Mota already in the UFC. We've seen him rocked a few times. Just with his stance, his chin up there, he's somebody who is susceptible to eating those shots, and Borschchev is great at disguising his attacks, mixing up his attacks, going body, head, or ripping a low kick before digging his left hook to the body. He's just an all-around, superb striker. And while Nolan has the power advantage in this matchup, I trust more so Borschchev, getting out of that first round, able to put on the kickboxing show that we've seen him display before. And if Nolan does want to engage him on the mat, certainly this becomes a more interesting fight. We've seen Nolan effective with his jiu-jitsu sometimes in the past. I just really can't trust his cardio to hold up in a grappling heavy fight. against a guy in Borschchev that's always drilling submission defense and takedown defense. I don't think he's going to let Nolan get to those positions here in this fight. So it's either going to be Nolan first round knockout, or I think the alternative, Borschchev taking over and winning this fight with his own striking.
Yeah, I'm pretty much with you, man. Borschchev, he's got to be safe early here, but he's shown to have ridiculous durability. The Hooper fight, I mean, he was trapped, just eating punches, really stayed awake through all of that, was never finished. The Sadikov fight, I mean, completely obliterated at times in that one and did a great job lasting through the scorecards and then taking over in the third round. Nolan is a pretty explosive athlete. He's going to be dangerous early, but he does kind of keep his chin up there. I think over the course of 3 rounds, it's just more likely than not that Borschchev is going to be able to pick him apart. That being said, I mean, there is an 8-year age gap here, which is certainly notable. Borschchev does seem to be slowing down a bit. Super competitive fight last time out against a guy in James Lontop, who he would probably like dance around and completely dominate a few years ago. So he is slowing down, but I don't think it's enough for me to want to get on the Nolan side here. Nolan, not someone who proactively grapples, which is usually what we're looking for when we're trying to fade Borschchev. So I am on Slava Claus to get it done. Don't mind the money line. Not confident he finds the finish, so probably just take a stab at the minus 120 as long as it stays in that range.
All right. We will now look at this fight, women's strawweight, between Wang Cong, minus 575 on the money line. Here facing Bruna, Brazil, who could be had at plus 380. Cong, certainly disappointing in her last fight. Huge betting favorite, 10 to 1, 11 to 1. And absolutely smoked by Gabriela Fernandez. Put down, bad, and then choked out. Now only 2 months later, back in the octagon, looking to get back in the win column. A young, highly touted prospect that now is looking to get back on the ascent toward UFC gold. A lot of people thought could be the case for Wang Cong. Not so certain anymore. She's certainly hittable, a credentialed kickboxer, but when you get putting out like that against a girl known for her grappling, it's just never something that inspires much hope. Betting minus 575 here 2 months later, it's crazy to me. I don't think Bruna Brazil has really the skills to compete with Wang Cong on the feet, but again, I'm not going to go to the window and put any money on this girl after seeing her lose me a lot of money a short while ago. Perhaps some recency bias. I mean, Brazil is not one to grapple. Really, here probably striking with Wang Cong, going to get outclassed. Somebody who's much faster, way more power in her hands. Wang Cong should be able to dance around and pick her apart. Again, just no reason for me to bet this fight. I should learn my lesson about women's MMA from the last time Wang Cong fought. At least going to stay away from her here in this spot, though she should certainly dance around Bruna Brazil.
Yeah, I mean, the price on Brazil is definitely tempting. Brazil coming off a huge upset of her own where she took out Molly McCann, really mixed in her grappling there. Definitely going to be the path to victory for her here, but she is coming up a weight class, 125 pounds after fighting in strawweight last time out. Definitely doesn't help you as a grappler. I'm also taking this fight, I believe, on relatively short notice. So Wang Cong should be able to kind of maintain the distance and win this on the feet, but at the same time, I mean, how is she minus 400 again? It feels a little bit insane. Brazil training with the fighting nerds, if anything, I mean, they do a really good job kind of setting up game plans, finding ways to win against a wide range of competition. Here, it's pretty obvious that you're going to want to take Wang down, but Wang, I do think is going to be bigger here, or Wang, excuse me, and I just don't know that Brazil's going to be able to close the distance the same way she did on Molly McCann. McCann, I mean, she's tough, but she really doesn't have the footwork of a Wang Cong, and she really doesn't have the defensive grappling ability even of a Wang Cong, and that's a weakness for Wang Cong. But Brazil wasn't able to finish her on the mat. Molly was working her way back to the feet. Again, that down at strawweight. I just think while this fight should play out a lot closer than the price suggests, Cong Wang is the rightful favorite. I'm no longer super on the hype train that I maybe was before, but at the same time, I do think as long as she can keep this fight mostly standing, it's a fight she should win relatively easily. Brazil, before that last performance, I mean, she was kind of getting set up to lose to McCann, but the change in camps definitely helped her. She does seem to be somewhat rejuvenated. Both these women pretty much the same age, so yeah, I just think the price is insane. Maybe just off that alone, you take a small stab on Brazil, but I do think if it stays standing for even 10 of the 15 minutes, Conway should be able to get this done.
All right. The first card to open the televised prelims is this fight between Aleksandre Topuria and Colby Thicknesse. Topuria, the minus 450 betting favorite here in his UFC debut. This fight is at bantamweight. Topuria, the brother of featherweight champion Ilia Topuria, his older brother, somebody who had started his MMA journey at the same time, but taken several years off here. You will see recently on his resume, getting back into the octagon as Ilya made his ascent into the UFC, fighting absolute cans. You will see nobody really of note on Topuria's record. Not that Thicknesse has beaten anybody that good either. This is a short notice fight for Colby Thicknesse, somebody local, fighting out of Australia. Originally, it was Topuria booked to face Kody Haddon here in his debut. But I mean, Thicknesse obviously risky to bet here, but an undefeated fighter on short notice, good size for this weight class. I might take a shot at this number. Really, there are a lot of unknowns surrounding both of these guys. You know, with Topuria, he's going to have the elite training camps and all that that his younger brother has, but he's not going to have all the same skills. Time and time again in the UFC, we see a pair of brothers come in, and just like me and you, like one of them's great, and one of them's, just one of them's just not so good.
Oh yeah.
I feel especially with Ilya, he's a bit of an enigma in himself. I mean, I didn't really at first see much in terms of technical greatness out of Topuria, but he does just have this ungodly cardio and power, and it's not necessarily going to be the same for Aleksandre. In the fights I watch out of him, he's just walking forward, has his right hand cocked, looking for that big shot against these super low level guys. I think Thicknesse, he could at least give him some looks here. Has the size to keep distance, throw some good kicks at Topuria. Topuria very good when his fights hit the mat. We've seen him effectively landing great ground and pound. But perhaps it's going to be Thicknesse shooting in this one as Topuria looks to let his hands go in his debut. He doesn't have the best shots either, but he's comfortable grappling, he's comfortable striking. And again, when it comes to these low-level guys, both making their debut, I don't see why one would be a 4-1 underdog just because of his brother. So I'm going to take a shot here on Thicknesse. Even on short notice, I think he has a decent shot at pulling off this upset.
Yeah, so I agree that Aleksandre is going to be nowhere near as good as Ilya. I do think he should probably run through Colby Thicknesse here. I mean, we look at this guy, Colby, and these guys are both bantamweights, but they're built completely differently. Like Thicknesse to me is someone who maybe either needs to bulk up and cut back down to 135 or get down to flyweight. Aleksandre, much like his brother, is every bit of his weight and weight class. He is massive, really sharp striker in and out of the pocket, good takedown ability, decent BJJ from what we've seen. I totally agree that he really hasn't faced anyone. But at the same time, I mean, he's training with Ilya pretty much every day. I think that matters here. I think, like you said, the physicality that comes from just, I guess, the family's bloodline, but also the fact that Ilya is paying for the best of the best now in terms of nutrition, in terms of training, partners, gyms, everything. And Aleksandre is right there with him, gathering all this up. And yeah, I'm just not really sold on Colby Thicknesse on short notice. I thought the Haddon fight was going to be close. I thought that was kind of insane of the UFC to do, putting two prospects against each other. But I don't think they wanted to go out there and have Aleksandre get run over. Like Dana's talking about building this card in Spain around the brothers and things like that. And again, I don't think Aleksandre is maybe ever even going to be a top 10 fighter at bantamweight, but I do think this is the type of matchup he should be able to dominate in, and I think he's going to. I'll probably bet him inside the distance. Thicknesse undefeated, but really nothing about his game is all that impressive. He's a pretty good grappler, but he's been hittable in exchanges. Again, not the strongest fighter for a bantamweight. Has trouble at times kind of holding his opponents down, fighting to decisions against a lot of guys with no wins, 1-1 records. So he has a little bit more experience recently, but like there's a bunch of wins over nobodies really add up to much more than a few wins over nobodies. I don't know that it does. So I do like Topuria here. Obviously he's not Ilya, but I don't think he needs to be to win this one.
Okay, we'll now move on and check out the early prelims. First here, a fight at lightweight between Cody Steele, minus 250, the betting favorite, facing Rongzhu, who could be had at 2-1. The undefeated Cody Steele enters here somebody I'm excited to see fight again. Great base in wrestling. We already knew that going into his fight on the Contender Series. But he really showed off incredible boxing in that fight. But put it on full display, tearing it up, moving forward, high pressure, and a crazy volume on his attacks as well. Perhaps the adrenaline of earning a contract was cause for that, but I think by taking a similar approach in this matchup with Rongzhu, we could see Steele finding a lot of success. Rongzhu is somebody who is powerful in terms of his striking as well, but also a bit reliant on his natural base in wrestling. If these two are going to engage primarily on the mat, I would think the American wrestler Steele has a decisive advantage there. Again, what I've seen out of him, great top control, and certainly able to hurt opponents, punish opponents from that quarter mount position. On the feet, though, if Steele is going to exchange with Rongzhu, he's going to have to look out for the power shots, the shots that may knock him down here, of facing a bigger guy, stronger guy. But if he's able to unload, put out volume on Rongzhu, somebody we've seen susceptible to the body, and Steele somebody who digs to the body with his punches too. I think he could really hurt Rongzhu, take control of this fight, and set a pace that Rongzhu is unable to keep. So yeah, well, whether standing or on the mat, Steele should have some advantages here. I think he's appropriately priced minus 250 as the favorite, and he's somebody that I'm going to be trusting here this weekend. Certainly a spot Rongzhu could land that big blow, knock him out, but I think Steele stays undefeated here. He seems like a really solid prospect.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. Steele's super impressive. Like you said, good wrestling base, but also tremendous jiu-jitsu. He's been in there grappling with the likes of Tai Rotula, one of the best grapplers in the world. This is a guy who's won world jiu-jitsu combat type championship tournaments, things like that. You look at his record on a site that has more than just his MMA, and you see how much experience this guy has on the mat. Rongzhu, I mean, I don't know. He's tough. He has power. I think that is his one path to victory here. But Steele's shown to be super durable. He's willing to get in firefights. I mean, the one fear you have is that he's starting to trust his hands too much. Maybe not the best example. We go back to like the Ronda Rousey days when she was dominating everyone on the mat and then kind of fell in love with her hands and it cost her career. Extreme example. I don't think we're going to have to worry about that necessarily here with Steele. But Rongzhu's going to get out grappled and submitted by someone like, I don't know, Chris Padilla, even though that wasn't a submission, that was a doctor stoppage. Like, he's been out grappled by far worse grapplers in the past. The experience advantage is notable, but again, Steele has been competing, albeit not on the UFC stage, on many big stages before. I do think on the feet it would be competitive, but the grappling advantage should be dramatic here. We've seen Rongzhu submitted 4 of his 6 losses. So yeah, that's the biggest hole in his game. I think the UFC knows what they're doing, trying to set up this young undefeated prospect for a win. So I do like Steele here to get it done. One of my preferred parlay pieces on this slate.
All right. Next up, we have a fight here between Kevin Jousset and Jonathan Mikulev. Jousset minus 220, the betting favorite here against Mikulev, who could be had at plus 180. This fight at welterweight, I think this is going to be a bounce back opportunity for Jousset, facing the man making his UFC debut. We see Mikulev fighting out of Victoria, Australia, winning his contract off of Dana White's Contender Series, and now getting a shot here to perform in Australia, making his first walk to the cage. It's a tough test for him. He's a tough fighter, but primarily he's looking to get his fights to the mat where he can effectively grapple. Kevin Jousset, very skilled kickboxer, way better in regards to his timing and his speed. I think Jousset more technically skilled when it comes to kickboxing. If this fight's going to be at kickboxing range, he's going to find a lot of success against the smaller and a bit overmatched Mikulev. In his last fight facing Brian Battle, that was a striking match. Jousset was not the winner. That was more so he was facing a wild man. Brian Battle marching forward, high volume of strikes, overwhelming Jousset. And he was trying to answer, but unable to do so. Just too many clean strikes landing for Battle. Once he gets, going on that rampage, it's very hard to stop the guy. Mikulev, not really the same in terms of, dynamic attacks like that. More skilled on the mat, as I had noted. although a lot of those submission wins coming against lower level opponents. So I really don't think he's going to be putting Giuseppe onto the mat or into many positions where we see him compromised here. Giuseppe should be landing the much cleaner strikes when this fight is standing, so I trust him to get the victory here.
Yeah, I'm with you. I do think Giuseppe's the side. McLeff, I mean, decent athlete, southpaw, can be kind of tricky on the feet, but not a puzzle that Giuseppe hasn't solved before. And again, like you said, McLeff probably going to be looking to get his grappling going. Giuseppe does have sneaky good BJJ. He actually has a really solid judo base, which is kind of translated well to MMA. Not going to knock him at all for that battle loss. Battle since he's beaten Randy Brown. He's pretty much a ranked fighter at this point. But yeah, I'm fine taking Giuseppe here. I mean, going to be the much better striker at range, which I think is the best game plan here. Stay safe, kind of. I don't know. Don't give his opponent any chances to really close the difference and try to grapple. I believe these two were kind of supposed to fight on the regional scene in the past, which makes it a little bit interesting. Probably a fun fight for the home crowd. Probably more narrative here than you and me really know about, not being from Australia. But I do like the Giuseppe side. I just think he's shown us more. Pretty well-rounded as well. I don't think Nikolaev is like some amazing grappler that he's just going to slice through anyone he takes down either. Giuseppe does have pretty solid judo, like I said, and submission defense. I like Giuseppe to get it done. Yeah.
Okay, next up, just a couple fights left. Quillen Salkilov, minus 600. The favorite here facing Anshul Jubilee, plus 400 for Jubilee. What are your thoughts on this matchup, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I one of my bigger underdog plays was fading Jubilee last time against Mike Breeden, where Jubilee just shrunk into a shell of himself in that third round. Breeden was barking at him and marching him down. But yeah, the tricky part here is I don't know that I love this Quillen Salkilov kill all that much, and I do think he's going to get it done. But at the same time, I mean, I don't know. It's just tough to want to pull the trigger looking at the price. I'm trying to find it right now. But last I checked, it was kind of ridiculous.
600.
Yeah, what are we doing here? I mean, the kid really just hasn't shown me enough to want to take him, but should be able to score takedowns here. Should be able to work for submission. And on the feet, Jubilee pretty hittable as well. So kind of no matter where this goes, I do think Quillen Salkilov, his name pisses me off. It's very hard to pronounce. I do think he gets it done. I just think he stays a step ahead. He looked good on Contender Series. Show he has the cardio to go for 15 minutes, which is more than we can say for Jubilee. So if this is competitive, I do think he'll be able to pull away. And I also think he's the more potent finisher, much better grappler. Just checks more boxes. Just not a fighter I want to back in his debut at minus 600 against anyone. So yeah, I do think he's the rightful favorite. I do think he's the side. Just proceed with caution and parlaying him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Jubilee is an entire throwaway fighter based on that one performance. These are both 7-1 professionals. Yeah, certainly Jubilee fell apart would be the correct term in that one. The head game's just totally crumbling there in round 3. But yeah, he doesn't really have a clear path to victory here facing Salkilov. While Salkilov is like a flat-footed striker that probably won't have a decisive advantage over Jubilee when these two are throwing down on the feet. I think Jubilee wants to grapple, and I don't think he's going to be able to out-grapple Salkilov from what I've seen out of him. Good upper body strength. Well, Jubilee's good at traditional takedowns and even using the body lock against the fence to even stall position and win minutes off guys. Salkilov is a legitimate grappler with legitimate jiu-jitsu skills, able to advance position, and we've seen him finish fights from out before, landing strikes. I think Jubilee is somebody who, well, certainly there is some value at 400. I'd rather, go against him in this one. I think Salkilov should be able to out-grapple him. And then perhaps we'll get Jubilee again, 400 down the road against somebody who just doesn't quite have the same skill set that could, nullify his grappling advantages and make this a more one-dimensional fight. So I'm with you on the Aussie here in his debut. Last up, we will look at this bantamweight matchup opening the early prelims. Again, reminding you all this fight starts 6 p.m. on Saturday. Hunsong Park, minus 240, the betting favorite here against Nyman Jargel, Kumendemberal. Park, undefeated 9-0, entering this spot. I think he does have the advantage here. Generally, good. I'm sorry, moving up from flyweight. He may struggle a bit here when it comes to striking effectively against a longer fighter in Jargle. However, he's more effective when it comes to wrestling and grappling. Tumen Dembara was taken down on his last fight 4 times, and that was enough to really sway that one, decide it. He gave Carlos Hernandez a rather solid fight, proving he's tough, fighting to a split decision. But again, just ceding the takedowns far too easily. What we've seen out of Park, he's effective when it comes to bringing fights down to the mat. I think he should be able to do that here against Jargle. And even if not, he could probably hold his own on the feet. His striking's not terrible. I worry about him against a super durable and dynamic guy. But again, if he's moving forward, looking to initiate grappling, get into Mendembra down to the mat once or twice, he should be able to win this fight. I'm comfortable betting him here as the small favorite.
Yeah, this is a weird one for me. I'm not really too high on either of these fighters. You mentioned Park moving up, but I think this fight is down at flyweight. So we'll have to double check on that. But yeah, Tumen Dembari is how it's pronounced, I guess. If we think back to Dana Bakary when he was with the promotions, another Mongolian, I guess that's how you pronounce that. It's a difficult name to pronounce nonetheless. I do think he's going to be the bigger fighter and probably the better striker here. But like you said, seeing him taken down so many times against Carlos Hernandez, certainly not reassuring by any stretch. I will say, I think Hernandez would beat Park as well. Dembari did a pretty good job kind of hanging in that fight. So I think the price is wide here. I do want to spend a little bit more time on this one. I don't know, not all that impressed by Park, and at the same time, not all that impressed by Topuria. So I don't know if I'm getting a 2-1 on what I feel is like a fight that could go either way. I don't mind taking a shot on the underdog. Just know that it's a super low level matchup, very volatile. But yeah, I just think the Mongolian here is going to be the more dangerous fighter on the feet. And as good as Park is, and as good as his submissions have looked, Topuria seems to have pretty decent defensive grappling off his back. So I don't know. I'm torn on this one. Again, plug the article once again Saturday morning for our final picks and methods, etc. I'm going to side with the dog here slightly, just kind of hoping he can keep it standing enough to pull away on the cards.
All right. Well, UFC 312 is yours this Saturday. Plessis versus Strickland 2. Yeah, be sure to check out our article on Dine Sports come Saturday morning with our official picks and predictions for each one of these fights. Nick, as always, thank you for breaking down these fights with me, and enjoy the card this weekend.